The first wrong note came from her shaking breath, not the piano. And in that instant, the poor single father realized the child in his arms was not afraid of the darkness she lived in every day, but of the silence that had suddenly swallowed her world. His fingers hovered over the keys, his heart pounding louder than the room, unaware that behind a half-open door, a woman whose wealth could buy cities was watching her entire life crack open. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in quiet miracles that change lives, to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Soul Tale. Your support keeps stories like this alive. He had never imagined his life would shrink to borrowed furniture, overdue bills, and a second-hand piano that creaked like an old man with every pressed key. Once, he had dreams too, but those faded the day his wife passed away, leaving him with a fragile little daughter and a grief too heavy for words. Since then, every choice he made revolved around survival. Extra shifts, skipped meals, silent prayers whispered into the dark. Music was the only thing he never let go of, not because it earned him money, but because it reminded him he was still human. On that winter evening, he had only agreed to come to the mansion because the agency promised quick cash for a short session playing calming music for a visually impaired child struggling with anxiety. He did not know the child's name. He did not know her story. He certainly did not know who her mother was. The girl sat stiffly at the piano bench, her small hands clenched, a white cloth gently tied over eyes that could not see light anyway. Her breathing was shallow, her body trembling as if the world around her had suddenly become too loud, too fast, too much. The room was warm and beautifully decorated for Christmas, but none of that comfort reached her. Panic had trapped her inside herself. The single dad felt it instantly because he had seen the same look on his own daughter's face during nights when grief hit without warning. Without thinking, he placed himself behind her, grounding, steady, human. His hands guided hers, slow and careful, as if teaching trust instead of music. He began to play, not a showpiece, not something impressive, but a soft melody born from exhaustion, love, and years of unspoken pain. The notes moved gently, rising and falling like breath returning to lungs. His music was imperfect, slightly rough around the edges, but it carried something no expensive therapist or luxury could buy: presence. The girl's shoulders slowly dropped. Her trembling softened. Her fingers followed his, hesitant at first, then surer, as if the piano were translating fear into something understandable. Each key pressed was a step away from the edge she had been standing on moments before. He did not know it, but with every note, he was pulling her back from a crisis that had terrified an entire household. Behind the door stood her mother, frozen. She was a woman used to control, to boardrooms where decisions worth millions were made in seconds. Doctors listened when she spoke. Staff moved at her command. Yet in that moment, she was powerless. She had tried everything money could buy to help her daughter: specialists, treatments, private retreats, but nothing had reached her like this stranger's worn hands and quiet patience. Tears slipped down her face, not because her child was in pain, but because for the first time in years, she saw peace touch her daughter without fear. She watched how the man leaned in, protective yet gentle, as if the child mattered more than the world outside that room. The melody continued, wrapping the room in something sacred. The girl's breathing evened out. Her lips curved into a small, tentative smile, the kind that appears when a storm finally passes. She did not know the man was poor. She did not know he was broken in his own way. She only knew she felt safe. And safety, for a child who lived in constant uncertainty, was everything. The single dad felt tears sting his eyes as well, though he kept playing. In that moment, he was no longer thinking about unpaid rent or his own loneliness. He was simply a father, offering comfort the only way he knew how. When the music finally faded, the room felt changed, as if it had exhaled. The crisis was over. The girl sat calmly, hands resting on the keys, her world no longer spinning out of control. The man stood slowly, careful not to disturb the fragile peace he had helped create. That was when the door opened fully. He turned, expecting a polite thank you, maybe a quiet nod. What he saw instead was a woman visibly shaken, eyes red, her perfectly composed exterior cracked by raw emotion. She looked at him not as hired help, but as someone who had done what she, with all her wealth, could not. That night became a turning point none of them expected. The billionaire mother did not offer charity out of pity, she offered opportunity out of respect. She learned about his life, his loss, his daughter, and the way music had been his last thread of hope. She funded his education, helped him find stable work teaching music to children who needed healing more than technique, and ensured his own daughter never went without again. But more than money, she gave him dignity. And he gave her something priceless in return, the knowledge that love, not wealth, was what saved her child. Months later, the piano room was filled again with music, this time brighter, steadier. The blind girl played confidently, her fingers dancing with joy instead of fear. The single dad watched proudly, no longer invisible to the world. The mother watched too, humbled forever by the night she learned that the richest hearts are often found in the poorest hands. If this story touched something deep inside you, if it reminded you that small acts of kindness can change entire lives, please take a moment now to like this video, share it, and subscribe to Soul Tale. Your engagement helps these stories reach hearts that need them. And before you leave, write a comment telling us what this story made you feel, because sometimes your words might be the comfort someone else is searching for.